This is Domain 13, System and Communication Protection of the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC. First, we'll go through the objective of the domain in its entirety, each practice and its objective, levels and practices, and a knowledge check. Our domain objective. System and communications protection activities ensure the organization is actively identifying, managing, and controlling all system and communication channels that store or transmit controlled unclassified information, or CUI. So this is a list of all of our practices and their descriptions that we'll go through each one of them, though. And as you can see, there are the practices are included in level 2, CMMC level 1 and CMMC level 2. So we have 16 practices, 2 at level 1 and 14 at CMMC level 2. So our level 2 practices. First, we have boundary protection. Monitor, control, and protect organizational communications, information transmitted or received by organizational information systems, at the external boundaries and key internal boundaries of the information systems. So as the assessor, you would want to determine if the external system boundary is defined, key internal system boundaries are defined, communications are monitored at the external system boundary, communications are monitored at key internal boundaries, communications are controlled at the external system boundary, communications are controlled at the key internal boundaries, and communications are protected at the external system boundary and key internal boundaries. Public access system separation. So for our practice description, implement subnetworks for publicly accessible system components that are physically or logically separated from internal networks. So the assessor would want to determine if publicly accessible system components have been identified, and or if subnetworks for publicly accessible system components are physically or logically separated from those internal networks. And now for our level 2 practices. First up, we have security engineering. Employ architectural designs, software development techniques, and systems engineering principles that promote effective information security within organizational systems. So the assessor would determine if architectural designs that promote effective information security have been defined, software development techniques that promote effective information security are identified, systems engineering principles that promote effective information security are identified, identified architectural designs that promote effective information security are employed, identified software development techniques that promote effective information security are employed, and identified systems engineering principles that promote effective information security are also employed. Next, we have role separation. Our practice description being separate user functionality from system management functionality. So determine if user functionality is identified as well as system management functionality, and user functionality is separated from system management functionality. So really just a separation of duties. Shared resource control. Prevent unauthorized and unintended information transfer via shared system resources. And as the assessor, you would just determine if unauthorized and unintended information transfer via shared system resources is being prevented. Network communication by exception. Deny network communications traffic by default and allow network communications traffic by exception. Deny all, permit by exception. So determine if network communications traffic is denied by default and network communications traffic is allowed by exception. Split tunneling. Our practice description, Prevent remote devices from simultaneously establishing non-remote connections with organizational systems and communicating via some other connection to resources in external networks, i.e. split tunneling. So determine if remote devices are prevented from, like we just said, simultaneously establishing non-remote connections with the system and communicating via some other connection to resources in external networks. Data in transit. Implement cryptographic mechanisms to prevent unauthorized disclosure of controlled unclassified information during transmission, unless otherwise protected by alternative physical safeguards. So the assessor would determine if cryptographic mechanisms intended to prevent unauthorized disclosure of CUI are identified. Alternative physical safeguards intended to prevent unauthorized disclosure of CUI are identified. And the assessor would also want to determine if either cryptographic mechanisms or alternative physical safeguards are being implemented to prevent unauthorized disclosure of CUI during transmission. So have they identified those two factors within their organization, and are they employing at least one of them? Connections termination. Terminate network connections associated with communication sessions at the end of the sessions or after a defined period of inactivity. So the assessor determines if a period of inactivity to terminate network connections associated with communication sessions is defined. So we know what that period of inactivity is, first off. Network connections associated with communication sessions are terminated at the end of the sessions. And network connections associated with communication sessions are terminated after the defined period of inactivity. So either, so they're being manually terminated, or like we said, after a period of inactivity, they're automatically terminated. Key management. Establish and manage cryptographic keys for cryptography employed in organizational systems. So determine if cryptographic keys are established whenever cryptography is employed, and cryptographic keys are managed whenever cryptography is employed. CUI encryption. Our practice description being employ FIPS-validated cryptography when used to protect the confidentiality of controlled unclassified information. So the assessor would then determine if FIPS-validated cryptography is employed to protect the confidentiality of CUI. So basically just to ensure that the cryptography that they're using is up to par. Collaborative device control. Prohibit remote activation of collaborative computing devices and provide indication of devices in use to users present at the device. So determine if collaborative computing devices are identified. Collaborative computing devices provide indication to users of device in use, and remote activation of collaborative computing devices is prohibited. Mobile code. Control and monitor the use of mobile code. So determine if mobile code is controlled and monitored. Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP, control and monitor the use of voice over Internet Protocol technologies. So determine if use of VoIP technologies is controlled and use of VoIP technologies is being monitored. So pretty simple, that one. Communication authenticity. Protect the authenticity of communication sessions and determine if the authenticity of communications is being protected. So again, a pretty simple one. Data at rest. Practice description being protect the confidentiality of controlled unclassified information at rest. And the assessor would want to determine that it is actually being protected when at rest, not just in transit. And our knowledge check. Question 1. Select the practice identifier associated with this CMMC practice. Monitor, control, and protect organizational communications, i.e. information transmitted or received by organizational information systems, at the external boundaries and key internal boundaries of information systems. And there are a few keywords in there. So the answer to question 1 is, of course, D, boundary protection. And boundary protection can be found at sc.l1-3.13.1. Question 2, describe CMMC practice identifier public access system separation. And that can be found at sc.l2-3.13.5. And our answer for question 2 is A, implement subnetworks for publicly accessible system components that are physically or logically separated from internal networks. Question 3, what practice identifier is associated with this CMMC practice? Employ architectural designs, software development techniques, and systems engineering principles that promote effective information security within organizational systems. And the answer for question 3 is B, security engineering. Question 4, describe CMMC practice identifier connections termination, which can be found at sc.l2-3.13.9. And our answer for question 4 is B again, terminate network connections associated with communication sessions at the end of the sessions or after a defined period of inactivity. And question 5, select the practice identifier associated with this CMMC practice. Employ Federal Information Processing Standard, or FIPS, validated cryptography when used to protect the confidentiality of controlled unclassified information. And our answer for question 5 is also B, once again, CUI encryption, which can be found at sc.l2-3.13.11. Thank you.